morning, welcome to my channel and my very first podcast episode. I'm Suniva, I'm an artist and illustrator based in Vermont, and I'm here today to share with you a little bit about my business, Moth Folk Studio, and I wanted to also take time to share about my biggest hobby, which is knitting, and tell you about my whips or my work in progress projects, some things that I just finished up, and my knitting plans for the spring. This episode is going to be probably longer than I'm planning for the future, just in that I'm going to cover some basics about Moth Folk Studio, share some more about that in depth than I will in the future, as well as go through, I'm looking at a pile of my whips to share. So going through each of those will take a little bit of time, but hopefully this adds some cozy chat to your day and you can get into it. Kicking things off, I'd like to share about Moth Folk Studio. This is my illustration and art business that I run. I started it in 2020 when I was laid off from my job and I wasn't in school. I was living at home and I really needed to find something to fill up my days. I'd always been an artist, and up until that point I was doing a lot of mural work or commissions locally, but I hadn't ventured into anything product-based. So I bought a printer secondhand from another local artist and turned my bedroom into a studio. One of my first steps was getting an iPad and learning how to use Procreate, which really made the transition from drawing onto a card much easier because everything was already in a digital format and I didn't need to learn how to scan my artwork. I do still work in traditional media, but as far as what I'm offering as a product, a note card, print, sticker, etc., that's mostly drawn in Procreate. So after I'd learned more about how to use my tools and get my systems all in order as far as manufacturing goes, I started going around to local shops and selling my work to them. Mostly I started out with consignment, a few wholesale accounts, but not many. And then I also created an online shop. This has been the last 5 years, and to fast forward, I now retail nationally. I participate in farmers markets throughout the warmer months, and I have my online shop still, and I retail locally at quite a few places, either as consignment or wholesale. This has been my full-time job for the majority of this past year, although in the past couple of weeks I did pick up weekends at the local ski resort that my partner also works at, which is fun and really gets me out of the house. I would say at this point I am mostly self-supporting with art. One of the biggest things to share about Moth Folk Studio right now is that I am about to go to my very first ever trade show, which is happening in mid-March in Portland, Maine. This is very exciting, and I want to take a moment to say a really huge thank you to everyone who's supported me in getting there. I put out a Kickstarter about a month ago to start to cover the expenses of going to my first trade show. It's something that I hadn't planned to do this year, and the opportunity came up before I had really put aside the savings for it. So I called on my community and said, hey, I'd really like to go. This would be huge for me. Any help you can offer, any support you can give, it would mean the world to me. And lo and behold, you really showed up for me. And I feel so much love and support. And I can't tell you how much it means to me just that people are out there and believe in my work. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you have other people in your life who are artists that you can or want to support, please do. They will appreciate it, I promise. So this first trade show that I'm going to is one where retailers or shops are going to send a representative to pick out and place wholesale orders, as opposed to a trade show where, you or me are going to go and pick up a one-off print, more like a shopper's market. So this is a very different thing than I've ever done, but it's going to be a wonderful opportunity to make connections and share my work to a whole new audience. In preparation for this trade show, I've been working really hard on making line sheets or like mini catalogs with all of my product offerings. revamping my business cards, making sure that all of the products that I want to have are ready to go, printed, and otherwise booking accommodations to stay, making plans for the displays. It's been a lot of work, but it's also been really creative and fun to jump into something that is so different from what I had been doing this whole past year, which is mostly farmers markets. So taking what I know from farmers markets and turning it into a trade show has been interesting because it's a level of polish for the trade show that a farmer's market can kind of get away with being a little bit more rustic feeling. And I'm enjoying the challenge of recreating or adjusting my displays, making things so that it's going to be really shoppable and interesting to a retailer versus somebody who wants to come and like dig through a bin of prints. The trade show is definitely the big news when it comes to Moth Folk Studio this week, and it will be for the next couple of weeks while I continue to get ready. I do want to share my most recent collection of note cards though. So I actually did get them printed on washi tape, stickers, we have the note cards and keychains, and then I'll also have prints of these designs as well, but I will share them with you. So this collection is spring, winter, summer, and autumn. Sorry, those went out of sequence of the seasons, but this whole series is based on the idea of seasonal celebrations. I wanted to create a card that could be given at the summer solstice, the winter solstice, and then the spring and fall equinoxes. Something to send seasonal tidings and give people an option to reach out to connect more through nature or the cycles of the sun. This collection was a real joy for me to work on. I really wanted to think about how the sun and the seasons influence me and the symbols of the seasonal changes. So the acorn for autumn, we have a daffodil for spring, this snowflake star for winter, and then the strawberry for summer. And I can't wait to send these to friends throughout the seasons, and I hope that you can as well. If this is something that you're interested in, there is more to come, and I will get them updated shortly. All right, that's really it for Moth Folk Studio news this week. There will be a lot more to come as I work on some projects, but this episode is definitely going to be very knit heavy. So we're gonna dive right in because there's a lot to cover. Getting into knitting, I am looking at my pile of baskets and bags with all of my WIP or work in progress projects beside me, and we're gonna get into them in a moment, but I wanna talk about knitting in general first. So I started knitting when I was in high school is when I really started picking it up, but it wasn't something that I was drawn to for longevity. I was much more interested in painting and that kind of thing when I was younger. So it kind of remained in the background until my early 20s when I was drawn to knitting for the therapeutic aspect. I found a lot of peace and comfort in sitting down and just knitting and the meditative qualities that you get from working on a project. I started by making a lot of cowls and very, very simple things before I started getting into garment work. And through the years, I've had varying degrees of success in coming up with my own patterns. And lately I've been diving into patterns that have already been written and just enjoying knowing that somebody has done some beautiful work to create a pattern that is going to be trustworthy, and I know at the end of it I'm going to have something that I'm going to love wearing. Through my trial and error, I have started a couple of projects early on that just didn't pan out how I wanted them to. For example, I was knitting this sweater that you'll hear about in a few moments that was fitting quite poorly. I started it without a pattern and I did some classic beginner, I'm gonna make my own sweater errors. It was that I didn't add any short row shaping in the back, and I also made it about twice as wide as it needed to be. So it fit very poorly and very billowy in the back, and I needed to really go back and redo this sweater. I started that in about 2017, And it's taken me until very recently to decide, you know what? I'm not going to come back to this sweater. It is too big. It doesn't fit well. I had gotten about halfway through. I'd done the yoke. I'd done about half the body, and I was about to start on the arms. And I recently decided, you know what? I'm just going to pull it out. I like the yarn. I'm going to donate it to another project with a pattern, and we'll see how it goes. So that's what I did. I started over, and that got me thinking about a lot of the projects that I have sitting on needles and why I haven't been working on them and what I need to do to get back to them and finish them off. So at the beginning of this year, I decided that I wasn't going to start any new projects until I finished all of my work in progress projects. Spoilers, that didn't happen. And then I also decided that I wasn't going to buy any new yarn until I'd stash busted everything that I had. Also, spoilers, that didn't happen. So here's what I did do. I went back through all of my projects and I took a look at what was important to me to finish and what wasn't. And I'm pleased to say that there was only one project that I looked at that was a work in progress, and I said, I don't even like this anymore. I ripped it out and I'm donating the yarn. I don't even like the yarn. Then there was this sweater project I was just talking about where I realized that I could rip it out and reallocate the yarn to a new project. So that didn't quite feel like starting a new project. It felt like I was wrapping something up still, or so I tell myself. And then I've gone through with all of my other projects and I've identified what I need to do to finish them, and I'll share that with you today. The other commitment that I had made was that I wasn't going to buy any new yarn until I'd finished and stash busted through everything else that I had, which was a great goal, and as I said, spoilers, it didn't happen. What I realized when I really started going through my stash is that I have a lot of half balls left over from projects past. It's not like I have sweaters worth of yarn sitting around that I'd said I'd get to and haven't, and it's, you know, $300 of beautiful wool and alpaca sitting on a shelf unused. That really isn't the situation. I think at most I have 2 hanks of sock yarn that I haven't gotten to yet, and I will, but I'm not really in a sock knitting place right now. I tend to do sock knitting in the summer more than in the winter, mostly because sweaters are very heavy and warm, and that's nicer to knit in the winter. So that said, I did end up buying a little bit of yarn recently, but it was for a very specific project. And with that, I think I'm just going to dive in and share with you what I've got going on. And I'll actually start with a finished project. This hat is the Weekend hat by Petite Knit, which I just finished last week. This is a birthday present actually for my partner at the end of the week. This is knit in the Blue Sky worsted wool stock. This is the colorway Wild Thyme. It's a really nice deep green that has sort of flaxen fibers of almost a golden through it. So it has some lightness. I did make a big modification to the pattern from Petite Knit for this one, where the pattern called for the hem or the brim here to fold up and be longer and then actually fold under again. So it would have been like so, but longer. And I decided I just really didn't need the triple layer fold. It would have been too warm. So I opted for the single brim, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. I'll lean forward so you can see. It just has a very simple shaping at the top. The brim, it's a 1x1 rib. It has really nice elasticity, and the wool is a lot softer than I thought it was going to be, so it's very wearable without being itchy. So again, this is the Weekend hat by Petite Knit, and this is going to be a gift. So I did buy yarn for this project because I didn't have the yarn that I wanted or needed to get this done. This knit up in about 4 days, including blocking and drying time, which was amazing. Oh, Lucy has joined us. Fair warning, the cats will be present in almost all of the episodes. I don't have the heart to kick them off of my lap, and they're gonna get cozy with us. So yeah, this took me about 4 days to knit up. Granted, I was spending a lot of time working on them very consistently. As I mentioned, I've been working weekends up at a local ski resort where I just sell tickets, and during downtime, I spend most of it knitting. This was such an easy knit to do mindlessly. Knit purl, you know, back one by one rib. So this knit up super fast. It was really satisfying. I like the end product, and that led me to my next almost work in progress. This is my next like on the docket project. I decided that I liked the hat enough that I wanted to make my own. So I picked up this yarn. It's the same yarn. It's the Woolstock worsted by Blue Sky Fibers. And this is in the colorway Morning Frost, which hopefully you can see here. Really lovely. I think that this is a really nice color for me, but it is a big departure from any color that I would normally wear. I tend to gravitate more towards grays, browns, neutrals, nothing too flashy. And to me, this is very flashy. So what I decided to do is I picked up a ball of this Barocco Aerial, which is a 65% mohair, 35% silk. And this is in colorway, I believe it's just a number, color 3462, which is a very charcoaly mohair. And my intentions here is to carry double with the mohair and the wool stock here, just to dull the blue ever so slightly. And I think that that is going to be a color that I'm more apt to wear. So I'm looking forward to making this. This project isn't going to be my main project to get finished, but it's so small and easy to do. It's perfect to keep in the car on a quick drive to the grocery store, going to dinner, a work project, that kind of thing. So I am looking forward to getting this started this weekend, but it's not going to be something that is my priority. So the next project that I'll share that I've been working on is one that I've been working on since March of 2022, and that is the Palmetto Shawl from Quince & Co. I want to start out by saying that I love the yarn that this is worked in. This is the Queensland Collection Llama Lace. It's a pure extra fine baby llama, 100% llama. This is the colorway 14 or Cardinal Sky, and it is so gorgeous. I'm going to show you up close. It's this beautiful raspberry color with these almost electric blue flecks in it. It's just lovely, and it is one of the softest things I've ever worked in, especially at this lace weight. Now, this project I started because I went to a yarn shop in Portland, Maine. This was actually what I started on my last trip to Portland. I went into a yarn shop and I fell in love with this yarn, and then I immediately searched for any project that looked like I could use it, which was this Palmetto shawl. Now, I started this March of 2022 and I worked on it fairly diligently, and then I really stalled out because this lace border has been a tremendous amount of work. The intentions for this shawl is that you finish the border. This is a short version, but you finish the border and then you pick up all the stitches and you kind of do short rows back and forth to backfill into a U shape. Now, so this is how much of the lace I have completed so far. And the bad news is it is only half done. The border is only halfway done, and it's already about an arm span, wingspan. I can easily go hand to hand with this. And what I've decided is that this has been on my needles so long, it's very tedious. I'm not enjoying doing the lace anymore. So what I'm going to do is give up, kind of, where instead of backfilling with such a deep U, I'm gonna elongate and make it more of a wrapping scarf rather than a deep shawl that can be wrapped around. So this project, I've made that decision to go back, modify a little bit, and just get it finished and off the needles. As you can see, it's not even on needles, it's just on the cord, and it's time to wrap it up. Now, I do love this yarn. However, it's in a color that I really don't think I'm going to wear. I've recently discovered that I'm a soft summer, or more suited towards muted tones, ones that just have a little bit of dullness to them, and this color does not have any dullness to it. It is gorgeous, but just not for me. So my intentions are to finish this shawl or scarf and then give it as a gift. Now, I do adore this yarn, so I'm thinking about getting another ball of it, but in a different colorway, and working on a sweater project. Next up, I have a hat project that I started in October of this past year, and that is the Forge cabled watch cap from Brooklyn Tweed. Here it is in all of its partially completed glory. So this is a lovely cabled hat that I started on my trip to Maine, and it was a great project to work on for a very long car ride, and then I spent some time knitting for the couple of days that I was there. A few things about this hat that I'm not super happy with and has caused me to stall out is that it has turned out quite a bit larger than I was expecting it would. I'm gonna put it on. It's gonna look a little silly because it's still on needles. But the way that it's fitting is just not quite right. And it could be my yarn choice. It could be that my gauge is a little bit off because I didn't do a gauge swatch. But my plans for it are to finish it and then actually to felt a little bit. Run it through the wash, tighten it up. I'm curious how that's going to take away from the cabling pattern, but my alternative is that I just simply won't wear it. So it seems worth it to tighten it up. And in addition to my loose knitting with this pattern, the pattern itself has a lot of very gappy options in the cable. Like, this is a slippy ladder stitch situation here, and it's so loose and airy and breathy that I worry that it won't be warm enough to wear. So going through and scrubbing out those fibers a little bit and felting it up just enough to tighten and make it a little bit more wearable and warmer, I think is the right move. This hat is knit on US 8s, and I knit in the Queensland collection, Kathmandu Aran weight yarn. This is an 85% wool, 10% silk, and 5% cashmere. This is the colorway 50 or Cabernet. I'll show it to you here. Now, this color I do believe is far more within my palette. It's a little bit more muted, very soft. It has almost like a dusted quality to it. And I think for an accessory, this is going to be a great color. I'm hoping to finish this one before the winter is through, but as far as hats go, this project is much more intense as far as following the cabling pattern, and I have to pay attention to it in a way that I don't for some of my other projects that I have going on. So as much as I'd like to finish this one, I'm wondering when that will happen just as much as you are. I'll keep you updated on the progress, but hopefully before winter is through. Okay, next up I have a couple of fingerless mitten projects. This is something I almost always have going in the background because they make excellent gifts, and I've been working on a pattern for a little while that I've actually come up with, and I'll share it with you. So here is the very first mitten. It's done except for the finishing of the thumb and weaving in my ends. This is something that I would like to write a pattern for, and I may talk about my interest or lack thereof in writing patterns on this podcast in the future, but a fingerless mitten I do think is something that I would like to write a pattern for, especially because I make these all the time. So this is knit in the Concept by Katia Cotton Merino. This is the colorway 107, and it is a 70% cotton with 30% wool. So it's a chained cotton with the wool blown in. I do want to share with you a little bit about my experience with this yarn. So I bought many skeins of this yarn years ago to make a sweater, and this is that first batch that I bought years ago. And then I did this very tiny little swatch here. And then I repurchased the yarn because I love how it looks. It has this very cool armor chainmail look about it, and I thought that would be perfect for like a gauntlet-y style fingerless mitten. But I've noticed that the yarn has changed a lot from the first time I bought it to the second time, and in a way that I don't like it quite as much, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if you'll be able to see the differences here, but this is that swatch from the first time years ago. Very soft. It has more of a fluff about it, and more recently it is a rougher, darker, less fluff puff kind of a knit. And you can even see it in the balls themselves. So the bottom is from years ago and the top is from most recent. So I would say if you're going to buy this yarn, it's really important that you get the same dye lot, or even buy in person and just see which you're getting. It's not quite as consistent as I would like it to be, but when it's good, it's really good. And again, I really do love this yarn for the way it kind of has this incredible stitch definition and looks like chainmail or armor. I think that it's very cool. I've also worked with this yarn in a few other colorways, and it didn't seem like they were quite as rough in the other colors as this particular colorway 107 has become. So this project is very low priority. I just need to do the other mitten and finish the thumb here. The next project that I have in progress is also a fingerless mitten. It's basically the same pattern, except it has a rolled edge here, and it's knit in a chunky weight alpaca instead. I don't have the tag for this yarn anymore, but I am almost positive that it's the chunky weight Juniper Moon Farm 100% alpaca. I've used it a few times for a few different projects. So this mitten is done other than blocking, and I have the second one on needles here. So this is chunky weight. Again, it's knit on US 8s, and a very low priority project, but I will get it done. I'd like to wear them before the winter is out if I can. Because it's chunky weight and it's such a small project, I can knit one of these in a day if I'm feeling like I'm ready to just sit down and get it done. So I would say you'll see an update on this project sooner than later. Quick note about that yarn that I've been using, which I'm pretty sure is Juniper Moon Farm 100% alpaca in their chunky weight, is that I have knit a lot with that, and I've actually knit a pair of socks this winter. They are looking very worse for wear because I wear them all the time, and I've even just chucked them in the washer a couple of times. So they've felted up quite a bit. They're really pilling, and the soles are getting a little bit more worn than I would like, especially on this one where I wore a hole straight through the toe. This I'm going to count as a work in progress project because I need to do some mending, and I'd like to get these done as soon as possible because I love wearing them. And even though an alpaca chunky sock is a horribly impractical choice to wear around, it's the coziest thing in the world and I wouldn't trade it, and I will mend them forever just to get to wear them. This is a very simple sock pattern that I work with very often. I came up with it from mismatching pieces of other patterns. I do Judy's Magic Cast On, and then increase, work my foot, add a gusset, heel flap, stitch it up, rolled cuff. Very, very simple, really satisfying, and it's easy to change up or add some fun color work. As you can see with this sock, I did mismatching but matching, and that was a really nice way to just use 2 balls of yarn instead of having to get more to complete the project. So these I'll be finishing up and fixing and hopefully wearing in my next video. I have 2 projects remaining to share with you, and both are sweaters. So first up, I have a behemoth of a project, which is the Heirloom Quilt Cardigan by Katrin Seeberger. This is a sweater that I started in, I want to say August of 2023, and it's felt like it's been on needles much longer than it actually has. So I'll share with you how far I've gotten. This is a sweater that is comprised out of these knit sort of quilt squares, all color worked. And at first I was thinking that this was going to be a really simple, easy, quick project because all I had to do was knit up 27 of these squares, stitch them together, add a border, and bada bing. However, it's taken a lot more time and it's been a lot more tedious than I thought it would be. This project, I can get through about 4 or 5 of the squares before I need a break from it. So I've been working on it in batches. At this point, I have 17 squares made, which I'm showing you now. And then I have 10 more to go before it will all be ready to be sewn together. And then there is and then there is knitting of the sleeves and the border, or the hems, the edges, whatever you want to call that. This project I am really excited about wearing as a completed piece, but I'm not very excited about continuing to knit the actual squares. As I'm showing them all to you, it feels like I have a lot of them done and I still have 10 to go. I am not much of a color work knitter, and even though this isn't the most extreme color knitting project, I did learn a lot about how to do floats along the way. For example, this was my very first square, and this is what the back looked like. For being the first square, I think that the front looks pretty solid, but obviously my floats could use some work in making them a lot tidier. I believe this was my second square, and they got a little bit better, but not perfect. And then as I went along, I learned a technique, or I just figured out my own strategy for the best way to carry all of the floats. And this is what most of them are looking like now. So much tidier and consistent, but it is so pesky to pick up all of the floats and make sure that they knit up nicely and smoothly. I am much more of a lacework and cable knit girly for sure, as opposed to color work, even though I really appreciate the beauty of a color work knit. It's just something that I have to practice and get better at and sort of persevere through because I absolutely want to do color work knitting. It just doesn't come as naturally to me as cabling or lace work, or stockinette stitch for that matter. All of this is knit in the Quince & Co. Finch, which is a fingering weight American wool, and I've double held it to make it more of a worsted for the gauge. As I've gone along, the squares have varied a little bit in size. Again, I've worked on this for years now, so varying levels of stress or tension have impacted the tension of the knit. Some of them are a little bit bigger than others and some are a lot smaller than others, but I think that in the end, when it knits up together or I sew all the pieces together, I can match them in a way that it all works well enough. Also, as you can see, there are quite a few different colors here. I am not going to share all of the colorways right now. However, in a future episode, when I am more diligently working on this project, I will go through and share all of my colors that I picked out and some more details about this project and how it's going. Here we have my very final whip, and it is a sweater that I started on January 20th. So this is what I was talking about at the very beginning, where I had a sweater that I had knit years ago and the fit was really poor, and I decided to reallocate all of the yarn from the project to a new one. So this was the original yarn. This is Quince & Co. I have the tag here. So this is Quince & Co. Owl Tweet. It's a 50% American wool and 50% alpaca. This is in colorway 361 or Otis, I believe. It's a worsted weight, and I have really enjoyed working with this yarn. I've done a number of projects with it. However, I have not purchased it in quite a long time. Like I said, I started this sweater in 2017, and that was the last time I bought this yarn. So I don't know how it's changed over the years, if at all. I don't even know if that colorway is still available, but it is a really nice smoky gray. It's quite soft. There are little flecks of natural material in and around it every once in a while, small tiny bits of a hay or grass, that kind of thing, but really easily picked out and far and few between. That is really the only thing that contributes to any sharp or roughness from the wool, because the alpaca smooths it out quite a bit. So I have reallocated it towards my Foxy Steps sweater by Rook Knits. This sweater I have been eyeing on Instagram for a very long time, and I've wanted to knit it, but I hadn't committed to buying yarn to make a sweater. So when I realized that I could just reallocate that yarn that I had to it, I got really excited and went to town. I started this on January 20th, so just over a month ago, and I've already completed the body and one of the sleeves, and then I am a good chunk of the way through, almost half of the way through my second sleeve. So as you can see here, I'm actually doing a double held. So I have that Quince & Co. Owl Tweet, alpaca, and wool yarn. And then I'm also using Plymouth Yarn's Surrey Stratus. It's a alpaca nylon mohair. Not mohair, but that same idea. And I'm really liking working with it. It's added a beautiful fluffy whitish halo about the sweater. The pattern itself has these really cute little eyelets, these sort of triple eyelets, 2 and then 1, that are the namesake of the pattern, which is Foxy Steps, because they kind of look like little foxy footprints or tracks. I think once the sweater is blocked, those are going to be much more apparent because they're very subtle right now. But assuming it blocks out really nicely and I wear something dark underneath, I think that they're going to show. So here is the first sleeve, and the body, as you can see, it's a bottom up sweater where we knit the body, the two sleeves connect, and then there's a yoke. This is going to have a bit of an oversized fit for me, but I am really looking forward to that. All in all, I'm really happy and excited about this sweater. I think it's going to be cozy and lovely and soft and wonderful to wear. This sweater is very much my priority project right now. I want to get it done as soon as possible so that I can wear it as soon as possible. My goal is to have it completely knit, woven in, blocked, ready to go, and to be worn before I go on my trip to Portland. Now, bringing it back to the trade show trip to Portland, my next knitting goal, after I finish all of these work in progress projects that I may or may not get to, is that I would like to get some yarn for the yoga sweater, also by Rook Knits. It looks really cozy and comfy, and that is one of my to-be knit projects. I'm also eyeing the cloud sweater or the cloud blouse by Petite Knits. I'm thinking that perhaps I could use that other colorway that I really liked of the Queensland llama lace for that cloud blouse and make a really nice lightweight summery sweater that's very drapey and cozy and easy to throw on. Now, I really do want to honor what I was thinking about in completing all of my work in progress projects and stash busting before I start anything new or get new yarn. But I'm feeling like the projects that I have going, a lot of them are very small and quick, and with some dedicated time for a week or two, a lot of them will get wrapped up. So I'm not too worried about it. And in addition to that, I am really looking forward to having a drive all the way to Portland and back to finish some of these things up. I'm especially thinking that the cabled watch cap is going to be my car knitting project on that trip, and perhaps even get that palmetto shawl finished up as well, which would be pretty fitting because both of those projects were worked on previous trips to Maine. So starting a new sweater isn't feeling as, I guess, icky to me as it could be feeling, especially since I've gone through my yarn stash and I've found out that I really don't have as much yarn as I thought I had sitting around. And as we're coming to the end of winter and I'm really working to get these work in progress projects completed and use up any little bits of yarn that I can, I am looking forward to a couple of spring knits, in particular the yoga winter sweater by Rook Knits. Now I know it's a winter sweater, but I'm planning on knitting it in a light enough of a yarn, perhaps something very silk heavy so that it can be worn in the warmer months or spring as well. The other sweater that I'm really looking forward to making is the Eggyo Hana sweater, which was just released for an English pattern this past week. It's a very simple cardigan that looks really cozy, and I think you're going to notice a bit of a trend in these sweaters that I'm knitting or really want to knit, with a very wide cuff and chunky cozy feels about it. Even though I'm thinking about knitting these heavier sweaters for spring, I do think it makes sense, especially given my climate being in Vermont. It remains pretty heavily sweater weather through the end of April, if not into May, and it picks back up again in September. So making a cozy sweater is something that will keep me warm for most of the year and be well worth it. As mentioned, this is my very first podcast episode, so I am still learning a little bit about my tools and what I want to share here, but I am planning to offer at least a bi-weekly episode where I cover what's going on with Moth Folk Studio and what's happening with my knitting progress, my knitting plans, as well as a few feature episodes where maybe I go through a complete collection of illustrations, or I go through and I do an everything I've ever knit, sort of everything I still have that I've ever knit video one-offs here and there. So please feel free to sound off below in the comments. Let me know what you'd like to hear more about, any questions. I'm happy to share resources and details of yarn and patterns. Just let me know what you'd like to hear more about. If you'd like to subscribe, follow along down below, or you can see more at Moth Folk Studio on socials or mothfolkstudio.com online. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm looking forward to next time.